In this first of our videos, we're going to be talking about quadratic solutions and an overview. To start off with, a quadratic equation looks like this. Y equals ax squared, that's the x squared term, plus b x, the x term, plus the constant c. So this is what a quadratic expression looks like. It's got an exponent to the second power, x squared. The coefficient of the x squared term is a, coefficient of the x term is b, and the constant is c. So this is what our standard format would look like. Now, if we want to solve for x, if y is 0, there's several different ways we could go about that. The first thing we do, if it's not in this format, is we combine like terms and we get it in the standard format. Then the first step would be to find if there's any common factors in each term. Like, does each term have a 2 that we could divide out? So, step 1, greatest common factor amongst the terms. Step 2, once we've done that, is we want to factor the expression that's left. So we'll say factoring. Factoring, there's many things that can be done. One thing we can do with factoring is we can see if there are this is called a trinomial expression because there's 3 terms. We can see if there's 2 binomial expressions that when multiplied together give us this trinomial. So I'll just write down 2 binomials. And in other videos we talk about methods to factor to end up with the 2 binomials. Another thing in factoring is sometimes we have a difference of squares, which is a special case or a special product. And again, that's a topic for another video. Another thing we can do is we can use the square root property. The square root property says that if you don't have an x term, then you can have the x squared term on one side and the constant on the other. Take the square root of both sides to get the x equals. So we'll call that square root property. Okay, so we have the 2 binomials, difference of squares, square root property, and then another thing we can do with factoring is called completion of the square. And that's where we have, and generally it's a lot easier to do if the b coefficient is even. And if we divide the b coefficient by 2 and square it, and we make that our third term, and we add whatever we need to each side to make that happen. A little complicated, and again, it's beyond the scope of this video. We'll just say completion of squares. In addition, if you're familiar with what a binomial squared looks like, a lot of times you can, with experience, you can pick out if this appears to be a binomial squared, you can then take it in reverse and end up with the binomial that's squared. Okay, so we have the greatest common factor is the first thing we do. Second, we look if we can factor it easily. Third, if we can't factor it easily, we can use the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula will work, if it can be factored, it will work in all cases. The quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 AC, that entire expression divided by 2a. And you see we have a, b, and c in this expression. It comes from these coefficients. So there you have it. There's an overview of approaches we can take to factor a quadratic.